So as I was introduced, Kahnawà Skydeer Yujats, Kahnawà ni de Wageno, Hoda Ia de Nera di Zahayas, Wakatahuni ni Wagit de Roda, Dano Igere, Kohigati Yori Humana, Zino de Kotarhase, Uma Wanizarade, Giari Wagene, Quebec di de Hodahun Zoho, ne Gainarasara, ne Ungowana, Dano Dini Guari Hoda, Dano Wagere ni ne Aguego ne Ungwehue, Goderi Wage ne the Wadohets de ne Gainarasara, Yarham Hara Owa, ne Yan Lafreniere Gadu, ne Giga Gorahne, Quebec Nagwadi. Wagadi Andre Wadore, Gadadi ne Ungowana, Nekti Segu, Gadewes to Haje, Chatawani Dano Angats de. Nexi Wagari ni Nenujera, Awada Angiro, ni Ungwe Humwe, Nigaya Doda, Ganya Kahaga, Nexi Waja, Ne Ungowana, Danazini Guarihoda. So in my language, I felt it was important to open and say that I don't feel that it is the Quebec government's responsibility to pass a legislation to protect our language. It's our responsibility. We've been speaking this language and knowing our culture passed down through the generations from time immemorial. And right now, in this time that we're in, we need to stand up and we need to tell the government that you could support our efforts and the initiatives and the things that we're doing for our language, for our culture, but I don't think it's the business or the affairs of the provincial government to pass a legislation for us. It sounds very paternalistic, in my opinion. We all know what we went through last year with the passage of Bill 96, but for those of us who remember history, this didn't start with Bill 96. It actually further entrenched the French charter that was created in 1977 to say that French is the official language in this province and that they're going to do everything in their power to enforce it, to protect it, to enhance it. And to me, we have a lot of similarities when it comes to Quebecers, right? They're all about their language, their culture, they want to preserve it and advance it, but it shouldn't be at the expense of ours. We know that our languages and our cultures have been here long before they came over those salt waters. So when we say it's our role, our responsibility, our voice, our law, that's what we're standing up for in telling this government, we don't want this. We don't want you to pass a legislation or a bill.
It's nothing new. They won't admit it. You know, they always speak about more autonomy when we speak about full autonomy. Major difference. I think what can be said is, and this is what I see and what I hear, is nobody's going to tell you you're wrong when you know you're right. So that's what I hear from our chiefs.
We're here today, obviously, in the defense of our rights, in the defense of our jurisdiction. These are jurisdictions that have been under First Nations governance since time immemorial, long before the arrival of the Europeans. And basically what's happening here again, it's the colonial state that's trying to legislate over our languages, and that's it is not their place to really to legislate over First Nations languages. That belongs to us, and this I believe has been supported at a number of court levels, more recently in the Superior Court of Quebec, where they confirmed that the First Nations do have rights over their families and their children. But I maintain that we've never ceded these rights. We've always had them. Even if the Constitution says these rights are protected, we've had these rights, possessed these rights since time immemorial, and I haven't seen any action really that would extinguish our rights. There's been a displacement of our rights, and I think it's time that the governments start to follow the lead of their colonial justice system, where they're saying, listen, First Nations do have rights. And if you're saying they're protected in the Constitution, then just recognize them. Because there's court decision after court decision that comes down, and then the governments do not follow the decision. They will interpret it to the minimum possible level that they can, or they'll simply refuse to recognize it, as Quebec does.
It puts a lot of stress and a lot of burden on our youth to navigate in this province through the education system and so forth. But what our primary objective should be is learning our language. We know it was taken from us. We see the impacts of colonization, Indian day schools, Indian residential schools on our people. And a lot of people feel empty. You know, it hurts them in their identity to not be able to speak their language, to not know their culture. So we have to do everything we can to ensure that we provide those opportunities, those spaces for them to grow their knowledge. And the biggest transference is going to come from parents. So we need to invest now in people who are having children so that they can learn, and hopefully their children will grow in a space where they can speak their what we'll say mother tongue or their Indigenous language. Because I see a lot of the problems that exist in the community, our social issues, a lot of the answers for them to get back on a good path and in a good mind and healing is going to come from Zinigwarihoda and Ungawana through our language and culture. It's such a source of pride, and a lot of times the people who I've seen who have been through, horrible things in their lives, addictions and abuses that I don't have to name, a lot of times when they got back on a path of healing, it came from those things that are unique to us in our culture, in our ways, our language, our ceremony, and our solidifying our identity. So I think we stand together. The chiefs of the AFNQL had deliberated on this numerous times, and we felt that we had to have a collective message. It's unfortunate that it's not being listened to or adhered to, but in the press release that we put out from the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, Yann Lafreniere told me to my face that if the chiefs don't want this, then I will not proceed forward. I thought it was a good thing, to ensure that future governments would be bound by, wanting to ensure that there would be resources and, wanting to work with First Nations communities to advance language and culture. I says, yes, but you don't need a bill, you don't need legislation. Maybe it's something else, maybe it's a policy, but, it just goes too far. And I know people within my community have said, can you imagine how Quebec would feel if Canada said they're going to pass a law for French and for the Quebec language and culture? They would be like, why are you doing that? It's not your place. So when you draw the parallel of Quebec doing it to us, it doesn't make sense to us. It doesn't resonate. And I think that was the reason why we felt it necessary to bring our people together and to have this, safe space about sharing what we feel. And that we hope that this provincial government will adhere to our opposition, and that we are not in favor of them proceeding and creating Indigenous languages, culture, Indigenous language and culture built for its protection. Because at the end of the day, that's our role, responsibility, and jurisdiction. So that's all I have for you, Tony Owanage. Yeah.